The alien ship sliced through the blackness of space like a silent predator. Inside the cockpit, Charon, the scout from the distant planet Vishara, stared at the glowing battlefield below, a planet scarred by fire and chaos, a place where no life should have survived. The war zone was a living nightmare, a hell unlike anything Charon's people had ever seen. It was the front where humans fought, a place of endless conflict and pain. The strange thing was that despite the destruction, despite the endless smoke and screams, the humans kept fighting. Charon's sensors picked up bursts of energy and weapon fire, but there was something else, something deeper. The humans did not fight like other species. Their rage and suffering pulsed like a storm, burning fiercer with every explosion. As Charon's ship hovered over the war-torn fields, the scout's eyes caught the movement of a lone human soldier. He limped, but did not stop. His uniform was torn, blood soaked through every layer, yet his eyes burned with fierce determination. Charon was puzzled. No other species had such stubbornness, such refusal to surrender, even in the face of certain death. The scout zoomed in to see the soldier clutching a broken weapon, firing blindly at invisible enemies, his face twisted. In pain and fury, suddenly the soldier fell. Charon watched as he lay still, eyes closed, his chest rising and falling shallowly. But then, with a sudden burst of strength, the soldier sat up, shaking off the pain and rising once more. This was no ordinary fight. It was a war of will, of spirit. The scout's mind raced. Why did these humans keep fighting when everything was lost? As Charon's ship moved lower, more details emerged. The battlefield was unlike any war the scout had studied before. There were no formations, no grand strategies. Instead, there was chaos, endless noise, flashes of light, and the stench of burning flesh. Machines lay broken, weapons scattered, and bodies moved like shadows in the smoke. Yet, amidst this destruction, humans kept pushing forward. The scout's sensors picked up strange signals, low-frequency vibrations that seemed to crawl over the ground, whispering through the air. Cunning could not identify them. They were not weapons, not natural phenomena. They were something else, a kind of silent terror that made the scout's sensors shiver. Charon felt a chill deep inside. The scout ship's AI warned of danger, but the alien pressed on, driven by curiosity and the need to understand. Suddenly, the scout ship was rocked by an explosion nearby. Charon barely dodged debris and falling metal. The battlefield was alive, more dangerous than any known war zone. From the smoke, the scout spotted a group of humans clustered around a makeshift barricade. Their faces were grim, eyes wide with fear and determination. Charon heard the distant screams and the sharp bark of orders. These were not soldiers, they were survivors, fighting for every breath. The scout focused on a human commander barking. Command's voice was harsh but steady, trying to hold the line against the unseen enemy. Charon noticed something strange. The humans did not just fight with weapons. Their bodies moved with a strange rhythm, as if pain and fear had been burned away, replaced by pure will. The scout's data showed signs of biological changes, hearts beating faster, adrenaline surges beyond known limits, muscles pushing past. Natural endurance. It was as if the humans were born for this hell. Charon's mind struggled to process it. Why would any species create such a brutal war? What power drove humans to survive this torment? Then the scout ship picked up a distress signal, a human soldier trapped under rubble, calling for help. Charon hesitated. The laws of non-interference weighed heavy on the alien's conscience. But curiosity, mixed with a strange empathy, pushed Charon to send a silent drone to assist. As the drone hovered over the trapped soldier, the alien saw his face, young, tired, but fierce. The soldier's eyes met the drone's camera, and a silent plea echoed across the void. Help us. Charon's heart, a part of the alien mind that felt more than logic ached. This was no ordinary war. It was a hell where humans fought not just enemies, but their own fear, pain, and despair. The scout ship moved back into orbit, leaving the burning world behind. Yet Charon knew this was only the beginning. The story of the human warfront was a story of endless struggle, of spirits unbroken by fire and death. The alien had seen a glimpse of hell, and it was unlike any nightmare ever imagined. The humans fought not because they wanted war, but because they could not live without hope. As the scout ship sped away, Karen stared into the stars, wondering what secrets this race held and what horrors waited in the battles yet to come. The alien ship drifted silently above the shattered plains of the human warfront. Karen's eyes scanned the battlefield below, where smoke curled like serpents into the heavy sky. What had seemed like chaos from afar now revealed its terrible details up close. The humans were not just fighting with weapons, they were fighting with something deeper, something that made their bodies and minds push beyond known limits. Caron noticed the strange biological signs on the humans' bodies. Rapid heartbeat, sweat soaked into cracked skin, eyes wild and unblinking. They did not react like normal creatures to pain or fear. Instead, their faces showed a mix of fury and something else, a burning refusal to give up. As the alien hovered near a ruined village, the sensors picked up a low, almost silent vibration. Running through the ground, it was not seismic activity, nor was it a natural echo. The vibration carried a strange rhythm, like a heartbeat from the planet itself. Caron felt a strange unease. This was not just a battlefield. It was a living, breathing trap. Moving closer, the scouts' instruments picked up strange energy pulses like signals transmitted through the air. But with no known pattern or source, the pulses seemed to affect the humans directly. Some soldiers suddenly stopped mid-step, eyes glazed over, bodies trembling. Others screamed without reason, clutching their heads as if trying to hold back invisible voices. Caron tried to record and analyze, but every attempt to decode the signals ended in confusion. The data made no sense. It was as if the signals were not meant to be understood but to break down the mind itself. Suddenly, the scout noticed a small group of human soldiers moving strangely. Their bodies twitched in jerks, as if controlled by something unseen. One of them turned and stared directly at the scout ship. Caron felt a shock through the sensors, as if the soldier's mind reached out, probing the alien's thoughts. It was a moment of terror. Caron realized that the humans had learned to use the battlefield not just with weapons, but with their minds. They were fighting with fear, with rage, with voices that no enemy could hear but that destroyed the soul. The scout ship was rocked by another distant explosion. From the smoke emerged figures moving silently, human soldiers, but changed. Their eyes glowed faintly, their movements too smooth, too precise. Caron understood now. The humans were no longer just flesh and bone. They were something more, warriors fused with their weapons, with the battlefield itself. Caron's heart raced as the ship's AI warned of approaching danger. The alien had seen enough. This was no ordinary war. It was a war of minds and nightmares. As the ship pulled away from the battlefield, Caron looked back at the hellscape below, knowing the story was far from over. The humans had become something terrifying and powerful, a force born from pain, fear, and endless battle. The scouts' mission was no longer just observation. It was a warning. The galaxy had to understand what the humans had become before it was too late. The war zone was more than just a place of fire and destruction. It was a place filled with voices. Caron's ship hovered low, and through the static of human communication signals, the alien began to pick up strange radio chatter. At first, the voices seemed normal. Commands shouted over the noise of battle, cries for help, the rattle of weapons. But as Caron listened closer, the words twisted into something else, a strange mix of language, code, and something almost like chanting. It was as if the soldiers were not only fighting their enemies, but also performing rituals to keep their own minds intact. The alien's translators struggled to keep up. The human's words carried emotions the scout had never experienced. Desperation, fear, rage, but also hope and determination in equal measure. These voices were not just sounds, they were weapons themselves. Caron noticed that whenever the soldiers chanted or repeated certain phrases, their movements sharpened, their attacks became fiercer, and their wounds seemed to sting less. It was as if their own voices were a shield against the creeping madness that stalked the battlefield. But the alien also heard something darker beneath the noise, a low whispering that no human seemed to acknowledge. It was a voice that crawled into the mind like a shadow, twisting thoughts, stirring nightmares. Some soldiers, caught in the haze of battle, spoke aloud to unseen enemies, their eyes glazed and distant. Karn recorded one chilling phrase repeated by many, the fog remembers. The scout felt a shiver. The battlefield itself seemed alive, haunted by memories and horrors that refused to die. As the alien dove deeper into the human communications, it experienced something new, a series of visions flooding its mind. These were not signals, but dreams, visions of endless fighting, faces twisted in fear and pain, of bodies lost and forgotten in mud and blood. Karan felt the weight of those memories pressing down, threatening to break its own mind. The scout realized that the war was not just fought with weapons, but with memories and fear, echoing through every soldier's soul. The battlefield was a living nightmare, a place where the past and present collided, and the lost never truly left. Karan watched as a squad of human soldiers gathered around a fire, chanting softly, trying to hold on to their sanity. They spoke of home, of loved ones, and of a future beyond the endless war. It was a fragile hope in the middle of hell. But then the voices changed. From the fog came distant screams and unnatural sounds, of battles long past and perhaps battles yet to come. The alien sensors picked up strange energy waves rippling through the air. Something unseen was moving among the soldiers, an invisible force feeding on their fear, growing stronger with every soul it touched. The scouts' heart raced. The war was not just physical, it was a battle of minds and spirits, and the humans, with their voices and will, were fighting not just enemies but themselves. Karana's ship pulled back slowly, the alien mind heavy with what it had learned. The voices from the battlefield were both a weapon and a curse. Told a story of horror and hope, of madness and courage. The scout knew the galaxy would need to listen carefully if it hoped to survive what was coming. For the warfront was no ordinary battlefield. It was a place where voices could kill, and where the echoes of the lost could shape the future of all. The battlefield was a twisted landscape of fire, smoke, and shattered dreams. Karon's ship hovered close enough to see the chaos unfold beneath, where the ground was torn apart by endless explosions and the air thick with burning metal and flesh. The alien scout's eyes fixed on the human soldiers moving through the carnage, faces smeared with soot and blood, bodies battered but unyielding. What struck Karen most was the raw, brutal intensity of their fighting. These were no mere soldiers. They were survivors shaped by endless pain and loss. Karon observed as a human soldier took a blast to the chest, staggering but refusing to fall. Instead, he roared a defiant cry, gripping his weapon tighter and charging forward. Another soldier collapsed under a hail of fire, but before death could claim him, he reached out and pulled a wounded comrade to safety, ignoring his own agony. The scout sensors recorded the strange signs again, heart rate spiking beyond known limits, muscles contracting with unnatural strength, adrenaline flooding their veins like a river of fire. It was clear the humans' bodies had adapted to the hell they lived in, turning pain into power, fear into fuel. Karan felt a mix of awe and horror. How could a species endure such suffering and still stand tall? But the alien also saw the terrible cost. The ground was littered with bodies, friends and foes alike, broken and forgotten. Each scarred face told a story of sacrifice, of lives spent in a war that never seemed to end. As Karen watched, a sudden explosion erupted nearby. The shockwave threw debris through the air, and the scout ship rocked violently. Flames engulfed a nearby bunker, and screams pierced the thick smoke. Yet, even in this hell, the humans fought on. Karan saw soldiers dragging the wounded from the fire, shielding each other from falling rubble. The alien's heart ached with every loss, every desperate cry. But amid the chaos, a strange truth emerged. Humans seemed to thrive on the very pain meant to break them. They moved with a rhythm born from suffering, a dance of death that twisted and turned through fire and blood. It was as if the battlefield itself was alive, feeding on their fury and fear, shaping them into something beyond ordinary warriors. The scout ship detected interference signals blocked by unknown technology. Attempts to communicate were met with silence or static. It was as if the humans had built walls around their suffering, secrets hidden beneath layers of pain, and Fire Quran realized that this was no ordinary war. It was a crucible, a test of spirit and body that forged humans into a force unlike any other. The alien's mind raced with questions. What drove these warriors? Was it survival? Revenge? Or something deeper, a fire burning in their souls that refused to die? As the flames flickered and the smoke swirled, Quran saw a small group of soldiers huddled around a wounded commander. Despite his injuries, the leader's voice was steady, his orders clear and fierce. Hold the line, no matter what. The soldiers nodded, eyes blazing with determination. Karen understood then the true power of the humans was not in their weapons or technology, but in their will to survive against all odds. As the scout ship prepared to leave the burning hellscape, Karen took one last look at the battlefield. The blood and fire had painted a terrible masterpiece, a portrait of war's cruel face. But in that destruction, the aliens saw a spark of stubborn light that refused to be snuffed out. The humans fought not just for victory, but for something more: hope for themselves and for a future beyond the endless war. The battlefield's roar faded in the background as Karen's ship hovered silently over a small cluster of human soldiers. Unlike the chaos swirling around them, this group moved with a strange sense of purpose and quiet strength. Quran watched closely as they navigated the scorched earth, sharing what little food they had, tending to wounds with makeshift bandages, and encouraging each other with whispered words and clenched fists. It was in these moments away from the explosions and gunfire that the true nature of the humans began to shine through. Quran saw how tightly these soldiers were bound, not just by orders, but by a deep sense of loyalty and shared struggle. Each one was willing to risk everything, not for glory or conquest, but for the life of the person beside them. The aliens. Sensors picked up subtle signs of emotions often ignored in war: fear softened by trust, exhaustion fought off by hope, and despair countered with determination. As the soldiers pressed forward through the smoke, Karin observed acts of kindness that seemed impossible amid such horror. One soldier knelt to help an injured enemy, offering water and comfort without hesitation. Another shared a last piece of bread with a starving comrade, refusing to eat alone. These moments were brief, but they spoke volumes about the human spirit. Karen's mind struggled to reconcile the brutal violence of the war with these flashes of compassion. How could a race that thrived in hell also nurture such empathy? The scout ship moved closer as the group reached the edge of a ruined village. Here, the scars of war were deepest: collapsed buildings, shattered trees, and the silent bodies of those who had fallen. The humans moved carefully, eyes alert for any threat, but their hearts remained steady. The commander of the group, a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet voice, stood tall, despite the weight of loss on her shoulders. She spoke softly to her team, reminding them of their mission and their reason for fighting. "We are the last line," she said. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot." Quran felt a deep respect for this leader, her words carrying the strength of 1,000 battles. As night fell, the soldiers gathered around a small fire. The aliens saw them share stories, memories of home, dreams of peace, and fears they rarely voiced aloud. The firelight flickered across their faces, revealing pain and hope intertwined. The scouts' sensors detected an unusual signal emanating from the group, something biological and emotional. A wave of resilience that spread through the circle like a protective shield. Quran realized this was more than strategy or training. It was the human will to survive, a force that refused to be broken by war or death. But even in these moments of peace, the shadow of the battlefield loomed large. The scout caught glimpses of the unseen enemy lurking in the darkness, ghostly shapes that moved just beyond sight, whispers that rustled through the trees, and the ever-present fog that seemed to swallow the brave and the broken alike. Karen understood then that the war was not just a fight against another species, it was a struggle against fear, pain, and the very nature of despair. The humans, with their relentless spirit and fragile kindness, had become a paradoxa. Race forged in hell but still reaching for light. As dawn broke over the ruined village, Karen's ship ascended once more, leaving behind the small band of survivors. The scout's mind was heavy with what had been seen, the horrors endured, the strength found, and the hope that still burned fiercely. The war front was not just a place of death. It was a place where the human will to survive turned the impossible into reality. And that was a power no enemy could ignore. Ren's ship slipped silently through the twilight sky above the war-ravaged world. Beneath the surface of the endless battles and shattered cities, the alien scouts sensed something hidden, a secret that the humans fought fiercely to protect. As the ship's sensors scanned deeper, strange readings emerged from underground bunkers and hidden labs. These were not ordinary military bases. They were places of strange experiments and whispered mysteries. Curious and cautious, Karan decided to investigate. Moving closer to a concealed facility buried beneath layers of rock and steel, the scout detected biosigns unlike any seen before. The humans inside were not just soldiers. They were something more altered, enhanced, and connected by technology that reached beyond simple machines. Within the cold, shadowed halls, Karen observed scenes that shocked even an experienced scout. Humans hooked to strange devices, their bodies glowing faintly as machines pumped chemicals and energy into their veins. Faces twisted in pain and determination, fighting against the limits of flesh and mind. It was clear these soldiers were no longer ordinary humans. They were bio-augmented warriors, pushed beyond natural limits by science and willpower combined. The scouts' sensors picked up fragments of conversations, scientists arguing over ethics, commanders demanding results, and soldiers whispering of strange voices inside their heads. Karen realized that the war was not only fought on the surface, but within the very minds of the fighters. A secret project, hidden from the galaxy's eyes, transformed the human warfront into a testing ground for new forms of warfare that blurred the line between body, machine, and mind. As Karen delved deeper, the scout uncovered darker truths. Some soldiers had lost themselves in the process, their minds fractured by the bio-augmentations. They became weapons controlled by forces beyond their control, puppets in a brutal game. But others had embraced the changes, becoming something new, fighters with strength, speed, and senses far beyond normal limits. These were the true horrors and hopes of the human warfront, a race transformed by its own desperation and determination to survive. Why Karen's heart pounded as the ship's AI warned of approaching patrols. The secret was too dangerous to stay. But before retreating, the scout caught a glimpse of a human soldier speaking softly into a small device. Her words chilled the alien to its core. "We fight because we must. But we are losing ourselves to this war. If we do not find a way back, the hell will consume us all." The alien felt a deep sadness and respect. These humans were trapped in a nightmare of their own making, a hell where hope and horror lived, side by side. As Karen's ship pulled away from the hidden labs, the scout knew the true battle was not just for land or power, but for the soul of the soldiers themselves. The secrets beneath the war were a warning and a lesson in the fight. For survival, some sacrifices might be too great. The cost of victory might be losing what made them human at all. The air hung heavy with tension as Karen's ship circled over the war-torn landscape once more, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the shattered ground below. The alien scout's mind was a storm of confusion and dread. The secrets, uncovered beneath the battlefield, haunted every thought bio-augmented soldiers whose minds were cracked and bleeding. Endless screams carried on the wind, and the creeping shadow of a nightmare that threatened to swallow the entire war front. But now, something had changed. Karan could feel it deep within, the strange energy waves pulsing from the humans themselves. The war was reaching a breaking point, not just for the soldiers, but for the very soul of the conflict. As the scout lowered closer, a chilling scene unfolded. Human soldiers huddled together, their faces pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. The whispers of the bio-augmentation machines had grown louder in their minds. Some muttered to themselves, caught between reality and nightmare. Others lashed out in sudden bursts of rage, their bodies trembling with uncontrollable energy. Karen watched a soldier collapse, clutching his head as if trying to hold back a flood of voices. The alien felt the echo of those voices invading. Its own mind, a dark tide of despair and madness threatening to drown reason. The battlefield had become more than a place of physical combat. It was a war waged inside the minds and hearts of every human who fought. Then, the scout's sensors locked onto a small group of soldiers attempting a desperate mission to reach a hidden communications relay that could send a warning to the galaxy about what was unfolding. Karen sensed the urgency in their steps, the heavy burden they carried. The soldiers moved through ruined buildings and fields of debris, avoiding patrols of shadowy figures, soldiers lost to madness, their bodies twitching like puppets on strings. The alien's heart pounded as one of the humans looked directly at the ship, eyes wild but filled with a strange hope. In that moment, Karen understood. These warriors were fighting not just enemies, but the breaking point of their own minds. The line between sanity and chaos was razor-thin, and many had already fallen into the abyss. As the soldiers neared the relay, an explosion tore through the air, sending dust and rubble into the sky. The group scattered, but the mission could not fail. Karen's ship scanned frantically for signs of survival, but the signals grew faint. Then, a flicker of final transmission. Human voice, clear but strained. Tell them. The warfront is not just a battle. It's a nightmare from which there is no waking. Prepare for the fight inside. The alien felt a shudder run through its core. This was no ordinary warning. It was a call for help from souls trapped in a living hell, a message from those caught between war and madness. As Karen's ship ascended, leaving the shattered world behind, the scout pondered the terrible future awaiting the galaxy. The human war front was breaking in with it, the very hope for peace. But somewhere deep in the chaos, a spark of defiance remained. A stubborn flame that refused to die, even when everything else fell away. The alien vowed silently to carry that message home, to warn, to prepare, and perhaps to understand what it truly meant to fight a war like no other. Karen's ship moved swiftly away from the war-torn planet, the burning ruins shrinking behind like the fading nightmare of a terrible dream. The scout's mind was heavy with the truth it had seen, truths no peaceful alien mind had prepared for. The human war front was unlike any conflict in the galaxy, a brutal, endless struggle not only of bodies and weapons but of minds and souls. A hell where pain, fear, and hope were fused into something terrifying and powerful. As the stars stretched out before Quran, the scout began to send transmissions back to the homeworld. Aveshero messages encrypted with warnings and fragmented data from the battlefield. The galaxy had to know. The humans were not merely fighters. They were survivors of a nightmare that changed them inside and out. But with every transmission, Karen felt the weight of the soldiers' suffering pressed against its own consciousness. The bioaugmentation experiments, the mental battles waged within each fighter, and the unbreakable will that burned like a fire was all part of a terrible price paid for survival. The scout reflected on the final human voice it had heard, the desperate warning of the war front being a nightmare from which there is no waking. It was not just a metaphor. The war had become a living entity, feeding on despair and shaping the humans into a new kind of warrior. Yet even in this darkness, Karen saw a spark of flame of hope and defiance that refused to be extinguished. The scout remembered the faces of the soldiers, the commander who held her team together with quiet strength, the young soldier clutching his broken weapon with pain and fury, the small group sharing stories by the fire, refusing to lose their humanity. These were not just fighters. They were the last light in a galaxy too quick to forget the cost of war. As the ship traveled through the vast emptiness, Karen realized the galaxy's future was uncertain. The humans' war front was a warning. To all, an epic tale of what survival truly meant when hope was pushed to its limits. Karen wondered how other worlds would react to this truth. Would they fear the humans, respect them, or try to destroy what they did not understand? The scout knew one thing for certain. The human war front was no ordinary battle. It was a test of spirit, a hell that forged warriors unlike any other in the stars. And the legacy of this war would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. With a final glance at the distant war-torn planet fading into the black void, Karen whispered a silent vow to carry the story of the humans, their suffering, and their unbreakable will wherever the stars might take it. For in their hell, the alien had found a terrible truth, that hope, even born from pain and fire, was the greatest weapon of all.